It being just past 6 p.m., I'll go ahead and call the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors to order for August 18, 2020. The clerk has verified the roll, and we do have a quorum. We'll verify a couple members present after we do the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation. And those are the next items. The Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Supervisor Locke. If you could please all stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now we'll have the invocation by Supervisor Locke. Supervisor Locke.
We come to you asking for your blessings and help as we are gathered together this evening. Show us how to conduct our work with a spirit of joy and enthusiasm. Amen.
Thank you, Supervisor Locke. Next item on the agenda before we do adopting this agenda is just to verify a couple members. Supervisor Warnke and also Supervisor Lenz asked to be excused this evening. Just verifying if Supervisor Spellman is on the call. Supervisor Spellman, if you could please open up your mic if you're on the call and just let us know if you're in attendance. Okay. Other than Supervisor Spellman, all other members are present except for Supervisor Lenz and Supervisor Warnke. So we'll move on down to the next item on the agenda, which is the adoption of this evening's agenda. For that, I'll call on Supervisor Albrecht. Supervisor Albrecht, if you could go ahead and open up your mic and make a motion to adopt this evening's agenda.
I move to adopt this evening's agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt this evening's agenda. We'll do a voice vote on that. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Supervisor Albrecht. Moving on down to the next item on the agenda. And that's a time in each meeting in which we give an opportunity for the public to speak on any item under this evening's agenda or any item under county jurisdiction. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak this evening? If so, if you could please go ahead and raise your Zoom hand, then I'll be able to see and I'll call on it in succession those individuals who want to speak. So if you're from the public and you wish to speak, please raise your Zoom hand and I will call on you in succession. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak this evening? Any item on the agenda or anything under county jurisdiction? I see one. I saw one hand there, and I'll call on Eric Wagner. Please go ahead if you could just state your name and address for the record, sir.
Eric Wagner, 4314 Stonegate Court, Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good evening, members of the board. Last week, I was forwarded the same email that was shared with each county board member regarding the Harv Ross property and my proposed project in the town of Amarillo. In this troubling email from Sherry Seaman, evidence was shared showing that the town had failed to comply with state statutory requirements on posting resolutions and ordinances. Thus, Ms. Seaman asserted the town board's resolution 01-04620 was in fact null and void. Prior to addressing the board, I spoke with our attorney, Chuck Hurdle, and asked him to research the state statute 60.80. Mr. Hurdle from Dempsey Law confirmed that towns are indeed required to comply with 60.80 for resolution to be enforceable. Therefore, I sincerely request that the county board make a motion today to vote to reject the town of Amarillo's unenforceable resolution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak this evening? Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak? I'll ask one last time. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak this evening? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close that portion of the agenda, and we'll move on to the next item, which is correspondence. For that, I'll call on Clerk Erdmer.
This evening, we have a couple of pieces of correspondence. We have a notice of claim from Leah M. Greer for injuries and damages she suffered during an arrest and when she was in custody, and that's referred to the Personnel and Finance Committee. We have a resolution from Adams County requesting the State Senate to convene to address 13 water bills passed by the Assembly earlier this year. That's referred to the Legislative Committee. A resolution from Bayfield County to conduct a countywide advisory referendum on the creation of nonpartisan procedure for the preparation of legislative and congressional redistricting plans and maps. That's also forwarded on to the Legislative Committee. And that is all.
Thank you, Clerk. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and that's reports from committees, commissions, and boards. Any reports from committees, commissions, and boards, if supervisors could raise their Zoom hands, and then I'll call them in succession. So first, I see Supervisor Gabbard. Please go ahead, Supervisor Gabbard. Your mic
Can you
is
hear
open.
me okay? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you well. Thank you.
I just wanted to make a clarification here on a couple of, 3 items that actually are up under zoning reports. Amendatory ordinance number 080620, 080720, and 080820. You'll notice in your packet, the vote was 4-0. It should have been 5-0. I attended that meeting versus via Zoom, and apparently no one could hear me vote, but I was there. So I wanted to let you know that the vote was 5-0 on each of those 3 items. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Supervisor Gabbard. Is there any other reports from committees, commissions, and boards? I see Supervisor Defferting. Please go ahead, Supervisor Defferting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay. All right, great. I just wanted to provide the board with an update regarding the refurbishing of the basement of the Orrin King building. There's been, the bids have come in, and due to extra design, architectural design, in order to get around that load-bearing wall, there was some extra fees that was added on to the total of that. So the Facilities and Property Management Committee approved to increase the amount of funds for that. I think we originally budgeted for 80,000. It's going to be about 20 to 21,000 over budget. Facilities Property Management Committee did approve of those funds, those additional funds, which will then be brought to the Personnel and Finance Committee and then eventually before the County Board. And of course, both those meetings will be taking place next month. The bids are still in review right now, but once the funds are approved, it should take approximately 2 weeks for the routing of the contract. And so I just wanted to update the county board on the progress there. And so that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Defferting. Any other reports from committees, commissions, and boards from any supervisor? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close that portion of the agenda. We'll move on to the next item, and that's the approval of the July 21st, 2020 board proceedings. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
There's a motion, Supervisor Finch, and there is a second. Any discussion, any changes, deletions from the July 21st, 2020 board proceedings? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. That motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next item, and that is County Executives Report, followed by County Executives Appointments. For that, I'll call on Supervisor Harris. And you can go ahead and open up your mic, Executive Harris. On my end here, unfortunately, I'm not able to open up your mic. Your mic is still not open, Executive Harris. Are you able to unmute it on your end? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and attempt to unmute all and see if we can hear you, Executive Harris. Okay, go ahead, Executive Harris. Please.
I should be unmuted now.
Yeah, there you go. We can hear you now, Executive Harris.
Very good. I'm sorry it's so difficult to do that. I'm on by computer. My computer doesn't have a microphone, so I'm on by my cell phone, and I think that adds to the complexity.
Certainly understand.
On my report tonight, I want to address Resolution 063082020, and that's allowing the finance director to accept the amount of the Road to Recovery grant funds into her budget so that we can proceed with submissions to the state for reimbursement. And in particular, I want to let the board know that we're in the process of setting up a mortgage relief program. We've gotten verbal approval from the Department of Administration. And also, they just came out with new regs August 10th that specifically address providing a consumer grant program to prevent eviction and assist in preventing homelessness as being an eligible expense. But there's still a few details to work out. But it is our intent to allocate $600,000 of general funds to the program, which then would be reimbursed by that 2.77 million that resolution would free up and let the finance director work with. So basically, initially, we would be outlaying funds from the reserve, the general reserve, but those funds would then be reimbursed through the Road to Recovery CARES funding so that the county wouldn't be out any money when we run the program. And the intent is to help about 300 families avoid foreclosure. And I think it's a worthy effort. It's a little unique because only larger counties that handle their monies directly have been involved in this so far. I think we'll be the first one that's under the Department of Administration to do so. But it's well worth doing, and it's actually fulfilling the real intent of those funds is to help people that need help because they've been harmed by the COVID-19 and the rules surrounding it. So I hope you'll approve that resolution. And the other thing I have is I've got a couple of appointments here. I've got an appointment to the Aging and Disability Resource Center Committee, and that's Nicole Niethoff.
Executive Harris, before we go to the appointments, I see a couple hands with questions. So okay. I see Supervisor Norton and then Supervisor Fari. So Supervisor Norton, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. County Executive, as you know, I attended or listened to on a webinar on the eviction crisis that's going to be impending. And while you and Finance Director have told me why we can't do it, because the DOA tells us we can't, why won't the DOA let us do it? And that's my question, because I think that's going to be just as big a crisis as much as the people being foreclosed on. So I'd like to have that answer, please.
Yeah, the AVCAP has been assigned to handle the rent relief portion of the COVID funds. and they've been awarded monies to do rental relief. In fact, they're well underway, and they'll only authorize one agency to do a particular function. And AVCAP represents a several county area up in this part of Wisconsin, and they've already been funded to do that purpose. I did inquire of them whether we could give AVCAP additional funds to expand their program, or if we could provide a program that would supplement theirs, you know, helping people that may have missed one or two of the criteria, but still need help. And I was told we couldn't on either one. And the explanations I got is that giving AVCAP any money would be re-granting, and that's forbidden under the program, and that it's their policy that only one agency be allowed to perform a specific function. I do know that there's other counties that are operating differently, but those are counties that are large and receive their COVID funding directly, and they don't have to work through the Department of Administration.
You know, Mr. Executive, I know I sent you a link to the same webinar I was about, and it was a program to help mitigate the eviction crisis. And what we have to start doing now is try to have a program. We have to involve many type of officials, legal and otherwise, to try to stop what may be many people being evicted because they haven't paid for 5 months, could be longer. And that's what that program was about. That's what I'm trying to get someone from this county to look at. I understand, and you told me maybe why we can't grant money, but I think we should find a way to how to mitigate this evictions that are going to come, that could explode in the next couple of months. Because I don't think we want a whole bunch of people out on the streets when their landlords kick them out. And in this program, it says it doesn't do the landlord owners, mom and pop people very much, or the people who resided. That's why I was trying to get someone from this county to look at that program, which starts in September for 9 weeks. So that's one of my basics. It wasn't just the money available for people to help them out, that part of it to help renters, but also about a program that we have to start to mitigate and not have so many evictions. Okay, so thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Mike, that the heart of the problem is going to be, I see three major areas that are really going to be in crisis. And one, of course, is eviction of renters, and the moratorium on eviction has been lifted. And that's why I tried to get involved with that program, but was denied. A second one would be foreclosure, and that's what we propose on going forward with. And that's part of the 2.77 million that resolution is in regard to. There's a third one, and childcare, I think, is going to be a real crisis, especially with schools going to these split schedules, which I understand completely why they're doing it. They're justified in doing that to reduce the number of kids in classroom at any given time. But if children are not in school during the workday, that will cause a childcare crisis for many families. And we're going to continue to monitor the guidance provided by the Fed and by the state's Department of Administration to see what we can do. But right now, it was even difficult to get permission to do this mortgage foreclosure piece.
Thank you. I see a couple other hands. So next I will call on Supervisor Fari, followed by Supervisor Shorsey. Please go ahead, Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
My question is for Mark. In your appointment to the Aging and Disability Resource Center Committee, you state, is it Mr. Newhoff will be filling a vacancy, but you don't find the vacancy.
It's the unexpired term of Harold Singstock.
Oh, it says it will be not filling.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm reading that wrong. Yeah. Yeah, I'm reading that wrong. I think it's just a vacancy where someone must have resigned. I'll be honest, I don't have that information with me.
do you want to pull this until you have that or not?
I'm not sure it's really relevant because if there's a vacancy, it's got to be filled.
Okay, sure.
And I just couldn't tell you off the top of my head where the vacancy is. I can tell you that next time, but I think we should go ahead and fill it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, thank you Supervisor Fari. Supervisor Norton?
I'll just chime in. I'm on the ADRC board. That supervisor would be filling the place of Supervisor Sinkstock, who left the board in April. And I believe that she just begins a new term and there's a limit, but I think her term would start as of last month.
Yeah.
So thank you, okay?
Thank you. Next,
Thank you, that helps.
Next, I will call on Supervisor Shorsey. Please go ahead, Supervisor Shorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Executive Harris, could you just comment a bit about our discussion at Finance Committee about our concern regarding the mortgage subsidies, and in terms of that we desired some scrutiny to avoid inappropriate home equity loan payments, and then also concerns about things like reverse mortgages, you know, where there were already other contracts in place. And how, could you just comment on how you're addressing that?
The program is limited to first mortgages on owner occupied property and would not apply to home equity loans and other borrowing against the home, only against the first mortgage.
Great. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and close that portion of the agenda, and we'll move on down to the next item, which is the county executive's appointments. Executive Harris.
Okay, so the first appointment is to the Aging and Disability Resource Center Committee, and it's Nicole Newhoff.
Is there a motion?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
There's a motion and there is a second for the appointment to the ADRC committee, Supervisor Newhoff. Any discussion? And we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, that motion carries.
The next appointment is to the Local Emergency Planning Commission, and that's Andy Radig.
There's a
So moved, Snyder.
There's a motion to approve the appointment to the Local Emergency Planning Commission. There was a second, I heard. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Very good. So moving on down to the next item, that's County Board Chairman's report. So I just have a couple things. So first, just a reminder, what I mentioned earlier in the meeting, Supervisor Lenz asked to be excused this evening. Supervisor Warnke asked to be excused this evening as well. Supervisor Warnke did want me to pass along that he is having a medical procedure today. He actually had that today. He hopes to recover fully from that. And he'll let us know in the future whether or not that would impact any future attendance. But he just wanted to let everyone know that he was going to be not in attendance and it was related to a medical procedure today. So I just wanted to make sure you all knew that. Then also wanted to remind everyone that we do have a special orders meeting coming up in the beginning of September. So that would be September 1st. Right now we have 2 to 3 presentations for that agenda already. Then wanted to give a quick update about Supervisor Weiss district. As you all recall, he retired from the board because he moved out of the district as of August 7th. So we have done the public notice posting. So that's still ongoing, but it has been posted. It'll be posted at least a couple times, twice. And I can tell you, we already have a couple of candidates who are interested as well. So once that announcement period is over, we'll begin considering the candidates more formally. And then finally, just one brief update to let you know, we've had discussions and there have been questions about the Health Director Authority. If you recall, we had a presentation, I think that was back in June, about that. I wanted to make sure everyone knew that the WCA, or the Wisconsin Counties Association, they actually convened a group to talk about that very issue. Given it's so common to counties across the state, there are actually very few counties across the state that had officially adopted a public health ordinance, or communicable disease ordinance, I should say, before things occurred with COVID-19. So it's a common situation for just about every county in the state. And so the reason I'm telling you that is they convened and met for about 6 to 8 weeks with a number of individuals from counties, from the League of Municipalities, public health, legal, including legal teams from WCA. I know the Wisconsin Restaurant Association had some individuals, and I believe some other individuals beyond that as well. So my understanding is, I know that they had a draft report that came out last week. And so I'm telling you that because I would anticipate some sort of final report from them very shortly, I would anticipate. So we'll certainly let you know when that report's available, because basically what that group did is they met several times, at least 4 times, but I believe more, over 6 to 8 weeks, to discuss and give what they term as guidance as to how to address the health officer authority. And they termed it guidance because there is not a model ordinance that they're going to be providing. They're going to provide guidance for different counties to consider as they consider what sort of ordinance, or if they were to consider a public health officer authority ordinance. So I wanted to let you know that has been ongoing over the last 6 to 8 weeks. I wanted to make sure you knew that because a lot of people had asked me about this, particularly about a month ago, and I told them my perspective, both folks who were hesitant about any ordinance or opposed to some sort of ordinance, and those who were in favor, that to me it made sense to see what the WCA, given they were convening this group, to see what sort of thoughts and recommendations that they had going forward. And given that I know that that should be coming out fairly shortly, a final draft, I wanted to make you all aware as a board. I would anticipate that all folks would have an opportunity to look at that, and then we would consider what sort of ordinance, or if we would consider an ordinance in the future. So I wanted to just make sure everyone was aware of that, because like I said, I've had conversations on the side, both in the public and the county board, and I told folks in the past that I wasn't going to be doing anything until we had that WCA report. Whether it's not a final draft that I've seen, I believe it should be coming shortly. So just wanted to let you know that. And then that concludes my report. So moving on next to zoning reports and ordinances. We have a number of them this evening, so we'll start with the first one, and that's report number 001. I apologize, I should have asked, did anyone have any questions for me? I apologize from the county board. I should give the county board an opportunity. Okay. So moving back to zoning reports and ordinances. Report number 001, Amber S. and Ryan M. Pfeiffer, the town of Clayton. For that, I'll call on Supervisor Youngquist.
Chairman, I move to approve report number 001.
There's a motion and a second to approve report number 001. Any discussion? And if so, just please raise your Zoom hand, any county board member, and we'll call on you in succession. So I see Supervisor Nussbaum. Please go ahead, Supervisor Nussbaum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see that on one line it says Clayton recommending, and then farther down it says Clayton has not responded. I'm just wondering which one is correct.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and call on Vice Chairperson Egan to answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sometimes we get them in and say, like, the person that's responding will come in and say, well, we've met with the board and they've said that's all okay and that they'll go along with it, but that don't mean anything has come in from them as of yet. Sometimes it don't come in depending on their meetings or whatever. So that's why that gets done sometimes. You'll see that on different ones also. The different ones will come in and say, yes, it's all okay. And the next one will say, well, nothing has come in yet. So we come across that every now and then when we have quite a few of them.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Egan. And thank you, Supervisor Nussbaum. I see one other call. I'll call on Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you proceed from the report, my question would be whether report amendatory ordinance number 8 has been reconciled with number 1.
Vice Chairperson Egan, are you able to answer that question for him?
I've got to look here first.
I had informed the clerk's office of that duplication, and she said she was follow through on informing Supervisor Egan and the chair.
I have not received anything on that, Supervisor Eisen, so
Well, if you go back and look at amendatory ordinance 8,
right,
it's identical with number 1.
Yes, I definitely see what you're saying.
I see what you're saying now too. They must have just got both put on there, both of them at once. I did not talk to the clerk on it or whatever. Sometimes these, here again, the committee don't always get them. They're all brought in by the staff, and they send them in and say if corporate counsel gets them and they just happen to be both on there, that could be what happened there.
And basically it's a good point, Supervisor Eisen. It looks like we do not need to do amendatory ordinance number 8 because that will be done with the first one. So that's a very good point, Supervisor Eisen. So we won't do it. Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Eisen, and thank you, Vice Chairman Egan. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and do a voice vote on report number 001. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries unanimously. So moving on down to amendatory ordinance number 080120, rezoning from A2 general agriculture to R1 rural residential for tax parcel number 006-0015-03. I'll once again call on Supervisor Youngquist.
Thank you, Chairman. I move to approve amendatory ordinance number 080120.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve amendatory ordinance number 080120. Any discussion? And as Supervisor Eisen mentioned, that means we won't have amendatory ordinance number 08. Any other discussion in regards to amendatory ordinance number 080120? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. And that motion then carries unanimously. So we'll move on down to the next item. That's amendatory ordinance number 080220. Town of Winchester for Daniel Snyder, rezoning from A2 general agriculture to R1 rural residential for tax parcel number 0280178. For that, I will call on Supervisor Joas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for adoption of amendatory ordinance number 080220.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve amendatory ordinance number 080220. Any discussion? Any discussion from a board member? You just raise your Zoom hand and we'll call you in succession. None, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries unanimously. So moving on down to the next item, that's amendatory ordinance number 080320, Town of Winchester for Primitive Gatherings, Anchor Point Properties LLC, and Lisa Bonjean, rezoning from A2 General Agriculture to B3 General Business District for tax parcel number 028-0433-01. Once again, calling Supervisor Joyce.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I move for adoption of amendatory ordinance number 080320.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. Snyder.
Second by Supervisor Snyder. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote again. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next item, that's amendatory ordinance number 080420, Town of Clayton for Richard and Judy Christensen, rezoning from A2 General Agriculture to R1 Rural Residential for tax parcel number 006-0519-03. With that, I will call on Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move for approval of 080420 on behalf of the town of Clayton.
Second.
Thank you, Supervisor Farr. There was a motion and a second to approve amendatory ordinance number 080420. Any discussion from any supervisor, just raise your Zoom hand. Okay, seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. And that motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next item. That's the second one from the bottom on the first page. That's amendatory ordinance number 080520. Town of Clayton for Big Ring Property LLC, rezoning from A2 General Agriculture to B1 Local Service District for parcel number 006-0006-10. For that, I'll call on Supervisor Youngquist.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval for amendatory ordinance number 080520.
There's a motion. Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve amendatory ordinance number 080520. Any discussion? I see one hand. I'll call on Supervisor Gordon.
I
Please
was
go ahead.
wondering, what is a local service district, B1?
For that, I'm going to call on our Vice Chairperson Egan.
That's different services that can be held there. Maybe our vice chairman could, or our vice chairman of planning and zoning can answer that one better. But that one there, I believe, was a service area that they could go ahead and, not a service station, but Mary Beth, can you answer that? I'm not sure. I don't remember that one at all.
Supervisor Gabbard? Just working to unmute your mic here, Supervisor Gabbard. Okay, now you can speak. Go ahead, please.
Okay. B1 is business, and for service area, that's a specific, it's a lesser, less, how would I say? B3, B2 are more restrictive for what,
Right.
Many more things are allowed in those areas versus B1. So Big Ring Property just needed B1 to do what they wanted to do on that parcel, which is, I'm sorry, I don't remember what it is, but it's not as restrictive, or not as many things can be done on B1 as B3.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gabbard. Thank you, Person Egan. Thanks for your question, Supervisor Gordon. Okay, any other questions in regards to amendatory ordinance number 080520 or any other discussion in regards to it? We did have a motion a second, so we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries unanimously. So we'll move on to the final amendatory ordinance on the first page. That's amendatory ordinance number 080620. Town of Clayton, rezoning from R1 Rural Residential to P1 Public Institutional and R3 Two-Family Residential for tax parcel number 006-0535-03-01 and also 006-0535-06-04. Once again, I'll call on Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of amendatory ordinance 080620 on behalf of the town of Clayton.
There was a motion by Supervisor Fari, and I did hear a second. So any discussion? Any discussion from any supervisor? Just go ahead and raise your Zoom hand and I'll call in succession. Seeing none, we did have a motion and a second for amendatory ordinance number 080620. We'll once again do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries unanimously. So we have one more item under zoning reports and ordinances because number 8 we already took care of. So that's the first one on the second page. That's amendatory ordinance number 080720. Town of Clayton for Robin Parker, rezoning from A2 general agriculture to R1 rural residential for tax parcel number 006-0817-05. For that, I'll once again call on Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for amendatory ordinance 080720 on behalf of the town of Clayton.
Second.
Thank you, Supervisor Fari. I did hear a motion and a second. Any discussion from any county board member? Just raise your Zoom hand. Seeing none, we'll once again do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. And that motion carries unanimously. So that completes our zoning reports and ordinances, because once again, number 8 was taken care of in our first item, as Supervisor Eisen had mentioned. So we will move to resolutions and ordinances. The first one is resolution number 057-08-2020. Commendation for John Flagg. I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for resolution 057-08-2020.
Supervisor Rasmussen, I could hear you a little bit, but we had a little bit of difficulty. Could you go ahead and make the motion one more time?
Okay, I move for resolution 057-08-2020.
Okay, there was a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There was a motion and a second. And Supervisor Rasmussen, if you're able, while I was able to hear you, it was hard. I don't know if you can get a little closer to the mic or adjust the audio just so we can do what we can for others to hear. But please go ahead and proceed.
Okay. John Flagg began his career in 1983 as a mechanic for the highway department, working on a fleet of equipment that had a history of breaking down. Over the years, the department began to upgrade its fleet, and John was eager to keep up with ever-changing new technologies and upgraded equipment. John worked in his vital role until 2002, when he decided to take his talents on the road, so to speak, and became an equipment operator, performing essential functions for the county, Wisconsin DOT, and townships, such as hauling materials, plowing snow, and completing essential roadway maintenance. John will be missed. The highway department thanks you for his service and dedication over many years.
Thank you, Supervisor Rasmussen. So there was a motion in a second. We'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next resolution. That's resolution number 058-08-2020. Commendation for Sheila Lettingham. Once again, I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Resolution 058-08-2020.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Please proceed, Supervisor Rasmussen. You can go ahead, please, Supervisor Rasmussen.
Sheila Lettingham was by Winnebago for over 26 years. She began her career at Winnebago Winnebago County serving people with developmental disabilities. During her tenure, Sheila worked closely with other divisions within human services, as well as school personnel and community agencies to provide the necessary support to their families. She truly cared for the youth she served and was invested in supporting them. Sheila was a wonderful resource for others due to the vast array of knowledge she gained working in her position. Sheila began interacting with her colleagues and out of work. She also enjoyed spending time with her family and her friends. Sheila hopes to engage in volunteer opportunities in this next chapter of her life, but is first taking some time to enjoy most of her personal life before moving on to her next adventure. Congratulations to Sheila on her retirement.
Thank you, Supervisor Rasmussen. There was a motion and a second, so we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. And that motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next item, that's resolution number 059-08-2020. Disallow claim of Betty Luzensky. I'll once again call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you. Resolution 059-08-2020.
There was a motion. Was there a second? Okay, there was a second. So there's a motion and a second. Any discussion in regards to resolution number 059-08-2020? If there's any discussion, just go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next item, that's resolution number 060-08-2020. Disallow claim of Tom Hanby. With that, I'll once again call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for resolution number 060-08-2020.
There was a motion, and there's a motion, and there is a second to approve resolution number to disallow claim 060-08-2020. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next resolution. That's resolution number 061-08-2020. Disallow claim of Terry Babcock. I'll once again call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you. I move for resolution number 061-08-2020.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and there is a second to disallow claim of Terry Babcock. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries unanimously. So moving on down to the next item, it's the second to last on the second page. It's resolution number 062-08-2020. Amend the table of organization for the Winnebago County Office of Corporation Counsel by adding a part-time administrative associate 3 position. For that, I will call on Supervisor Wingren. Please go ahead, Supervisor
Thank you,
Wingren. Your
Mr.
mic's open.
Chairman. I move for the board's consideration of resolution 62-8-2020.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 062-08-2020. Thank you, Supervisor Wingren. Any discussion? If there is, please go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Supervisor Wingren. So we'll move on down to the next resolution, the final one on the second page. It's resolution number 063-08-2020. Authorize the Winnebago County Finance Department to accept reimbursement from the Wisconsin Department of Administration Routes to Recovery Local Government Aid Grants in an amount up to $2,773,211 and appropriate the funds to reimbursable expenses directly related to the COVID-19 pandemic. With that, I will call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move resolution number 06308-2020.
There's a motion. Is there a second? There is a motion and a second to approve resolution number 063-08-2020. Any discussion? If there's any discussion from any supervisor, just go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. I see one. I will go ahead and call on Supervisor Gabbert. Please go ahead, Supervisor Gabbert.
Just a quick clarification question, maybe to Vicky, or maybe to Joel. Do we get this money? I just want a clarification on this. My understanding is we get this money and then we have to show our reimbursable expenses, or do we show the expenses and then get some of this money? Or I'm saying is 2,773,211 earmarked for Winnebago County, and then it is our job to come up with reimbursable expenses, and who would take care of that?
Sure, if I may.
Please.
We have 3 reporting periods that they came up with. We reported already July 15th. We'll report September 15th and November 15th. We do not get the money until we submit the expenses, and then we only get back what they approve. So our first reporting period, we submitted $173,000, and we were reimbursed $160,000 of that. So again, we don't get the money unless.
Okay. Thank you very much. That clarifies it for me.
Thank you, Director Fitzgerald, and thank you, Supervisor. Thank you, Director Fitzgerald, for that answer, and thank you, Supervisor Gabbert. Supervisor Powers, I believe she has a question or a comment, so I will go ahead. Please go ahead, Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know how many more resolutions Supervisor Rasmussen has to present, but I'm wondering, just, if he logs off and logs back in, might that fix his audio part of his Zoom? Because we can't hear him at all, or can't make out what he's saying.
Very good. Yes, it is difficult for some reason, Supervisor Rasmussen. So to answer your question, Supervisor Powers, he actually only has one other resolution. It is actually the second to last in regards to the merit pay plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor Powers. Okay, any other discussion in regards to resolution number 063-08-2020? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. That motion carries unanimously. So moving on down to the next page, that's actually the third page at the top. We're on resolution number 064-08-2020. Authorize the Winnebago Public Health Department to accept additional funding from the Wisconsin Department of Health and Human Services in the amount of $136,839, and appropriate the funds to support the public health response to the COVID-19 pandemic. For that, I'll call on Supervisor Norton.
I make a motion to adopt resolution 064-082020.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 064-08-2020. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the next resolution, resolution number 065-08-2020. Authorize the Winnebago County. I'm going to go ahead and mute because I can hear some background noise. Let's see it. Resolution number 065-08-2020. Authorize the Winnebago County Public Health Department to accept funding from the Wisconsin Department of Health and Human Services in the amount of $1,594,718 and appropriate the funds for the public health response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'll once again call on Supervisor Norton.
I make a motion to adopt resolution 06508/2020.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 065-08-2020. Any discussion? I see one. I'll call on Supervisor Fari. Please go ahead, Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question in regard to this, the committee, is it, or is it a commission?
It's a board.
Okay, and that has 8 voting members?
Yes, that's correct.
The committee vote was 401. Isn't a majority 5?
That's a very good question. It's the majority of the members present as long as you have a quorum in attendance.
Could
Okay.
I go ahead and interchange, Mr. Chairman? Just to inform the board, as you well know, the Board of Health only has 7 members right now. We have 2 vacancies. So when we have 5 of 7, that would be a majority. We still have to fill two of those vacancies.
Thank you. And thank you for the question, Supervisor Fari. It's a good question. I kind of anticipated that someone might ask. It's a fair question, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on resolution number 065-08-2020? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next resolution. That's resolution number 066-08-2020. Authorize the Winnebago County Department of Human Services to accept additional fiscal year 2020 funding in the amount of $435,042 and appropriate the funds to the related program expenses. For that, I'll call on Supervisor Lautenschlager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the adoption of resolution 066-08-2020.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 066-08-2020. Any discussion? I see one calling. I'm going to go ahead and call on Supervisor Gordon.
That was an accident, my apologies.
Very good. Thank you, Supervisor Gordon. Any other call-ins from any supervisor? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next resolution. It's resolution number 067-08-2020. Approve the transfer of $150,000 from the general fund undesignated fund balance to the Winnebago County Information Systems Department capital outlay budget for fiber optic work on County Trunk Highway A. For that, I will call on Supervisor Conrad. Please go ahead, Supervisor Conrad.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion that we approve resolution number 067-08-2020.
There's a motion. There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 067-08-2020. Any discussion? If anyone has any discussion, just raise their Zoom hand. Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next item, that's resolution number 068-08-2020. Approve 2021 to 2030 Winnebago County Land and Water Resource Management Plan with the revisions. For that, I will call on Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my pleasure to introduce resolution 068-08-2020. Let me offer a couple.
Do we have a second first?
Second.
Okay, there's no second. Please go ahead, Supervisor Fari.
A couple corrections. The committee vote was 11-0. That was a state committee. The Land Conservation Committee vote was 7-0.
Thank you.
Other than that, the Resource Management Plan is our plan that we use that guides the committee on the processes we're going to use to implement programs within the conservation programs, soil and water programs, etc.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fari. We did have a motion and we had a second, so any discussion on resolution number 068-08-2020? Just go ahead and raise your Zoom hand if any questions. Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries unanimously. So moving on to the final item on the third page, because we already addressed 069 on a previous agenda. So we're on resolution number 070-08-2020. Support pending legislation to amend hearing timelines for juveniles taken into custody, Chapter 938 Wisconsin statutes, to coincide with hearing timelines for children in need of protection or services, otherwise known as CHIPS, taken into custody, Chapter 48 Wisconsin statutes, so that a day in which the clerk of circuit court's office is closed does not count toward the computation of the Chapter 938 detention hearing timeline. For that, I will call on Supervisor Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the approval of resolution number 070-08-2020.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve resolution number 070-08-2020. Any discussion? I see I'll call on Supervisor Shorsey, followed by Supervisor Powers. Please go ahead, Supervisor Shorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question. Who referred this or who requested the legislative committee to deal with this?
This would have been sent in from the clerk's office to give to us. And then it brought, I believe, I'm not exactly sure, but then I think Supervisor Norton is the one that introduced it. I asked him to introduce it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey, and thanks for the clarification, Vice Chairman Egan. So next, I will call on Supervisor Powers. I no longer see your hand up. Did you have any comments, Supervisor Powers?
I do. I don't know how it fell off. I didn't touch it.
Okay.
I just had a question. There's an indication that they would be seen within or have a hearing within 48 hours. And then that is excluding Saturdays and Sundays and legal holidays. And now a possibility of a day when an office is closed anyway. How long could this potentially take before a child receives a hearing? I'm just asking for clarification about the possibility of how long it could be.
Now, I see Director Topol is here. Perhaps I'll call on Director Topol. Director Topol, can you answer Supervisor Powers' question? I'm going to go ahead and unmute your mic. Please go ahead, Director Topol.
Hello. Karen, would you mind repeating the question you have?
Sure. Thanks, Bill. It says that the detention hearing would have to be here. The child would have to have his hearing listed within 48 hours of the time in which the decision to hold the child was made. That excludes Saturdays, Sundays, legal holidays, which then probably would be the next Monday. And if we're also including days in which the clerk of circuit court's office is closed, that's yet another day. How at the far end, how long might a child wait for a hearing?
Without having all of those extra days for holidays or weekends, within a day or two, sometimes a little bit longer, but they try to expedite those hearings. And again, that's the juvenile court judge that would, and the scheduling of that court. But usually it's very quickly.
But it already has to be within 48 hours. That's 2 days. So then comes Saturday, that's 3 days. Then comes Sunday, that's 4 days. Then comes Monday, that might be a holiday, that's 5 days. And if there's another day when the circuit court's office might be closed, and we're not counting that as that either, we're coming on close to a week that a child might be waiting for a hearing. Is that correct? Possibly?
Worst case scenario, it could be a week.
Unlikely.
Oh, who's unlikely?
So it could be a week in a worst case scenario.
Chairman Ramos,
Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt. This is Mary Ann Miller. I can tell you, Supervisor Powers, before I became Corp Counsel, I handled CHIPS for almost 10 years. And as Director Topol indicates, it's statutory. It's 48 hours. The time that it could be longer is, again, based on my 10 years of experience, a Thanksgiving weekend where, let's say there was a child taken into custody on Wednesday. Thursday is a federal holiday, Friday is not. So there would be a hearing on Monday. But these are statutory timelines that the court absolutely adheres to. So Thanksgiving would typically be the time you would see it.
Thank you, Counselor.
Sure.
Thank you for that clarification, Corporation Counsel. Thank you as well, Director Topol, and thanks for the question, Supervisor Powers. So next I see Supervisor Wingren. We're trying to unmute your mic here, Supervisor Wingren. There we go.
My
Please
question
go
has
ahead.
been answered, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, Supervisor Wingren. Next, I'll call on Supervisor Brunn.
Yes, I'd just like to say that the hearing may take that long, but most of the time the juvenile is not in custody. I mean, so to speak, he's not in a locked up facility. Most of the time they're placed in a home, in their own home, or with a situation where a relative is taking care of them. One of the first phases that law enforcement does is have a juvenile intake worker from social services determine placement of where that child should be. And then the hearing proceeds. And like Mary Ann said, it's basically all within the statutes, and it's been that way for a long time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Brunn. That's helpful to hear with your background, so appreciate it. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we did have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 070-08-2020. We'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries unanimously. So moving on to the final page, that's, I believe, page number 4. We're at the top of it. We're at resolution number 071-08-2020. Support the Hmong and Laotian communities within Winnebago County and oppose federal deportations to Laos. For that, I will call on Vice Chairman Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the approval of resolution number 071-08-2020.
Second. Snyder.
Okay, second is Supervisor Snyder. There was a motion and a second to approve resolution number 071-08-2020. Any discussion? I see a couple of call-ins. So first I will call on Supervisor Nussbaum, followed by Supervisor Fari. Please go ahead, Supervisor Nussbaum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know quite a few Hmong people and I respect them all. In fact, there's a family in Appleton that I pray for every single day. But just because somebody's of a certain nationality or group doesn't give them any rights if they're a criminal to not bear the consequences of that. That's all I got.
Thank you, Supervisor Nussbaum. Next speaker is Supervisor Fari, followed by Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well, Supervisor Fari.
Okay, thank you. If you'll note, the vote was 11-1. I was the one that voted no. And let me say, you know, I support with compassion the wording in the resolution, probability of the intent of the resolution. But I have a conflict because I took an oath to uphold the laws of the United States of America and the state of Wisconsin. And if I support this, I feel I'm in conflict with that oath. So I voted no on this one, and I'll no probably on the next one also, just based on that point. I feel I have a conflict. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fari. Next speaker is Supervisor Powers, followed by Supervisor Norton. Please go ahead, Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to remind the supervisors that when at the end of the Vietnam War, nearly 50 years ago, we made a vow to the Hmong and Laotian people who had helped our soldiers, boys who were my age, boys I went to school with, boys I dated. We made a promise to them that we would protect them and give them a place to live. And I'm really leery about this possibility that we might be looking at deporting Hmong and Laotian people. They risked their lives for our soldiers, and we made a promise to them. I'm pleading for you to vote this in favor of the Hmong and Laotian people. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers. Next speaker is Supervisor Norton, followed by Supervisor Nussbaum.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to ask you a courtesy if you would let Mi Yang from the Hmong Lao Association. She's the one who talked to me, and I talked to her, and that's why we presented this resolution back in March. It's been a long time coming before this board. If you would allow her the courtesy to speak just a few words about this resolution, she talked about it at the legislative committee, and maybe she could answer some questions that may linger. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Norton. I appreciate the request, but I'm going to try to hold and be consistent because we did have an opportunity for public comments earlier. So even though I understand what you're asking, I'm going to hold off because it is at the board level now. So I'll go ahead and call on next to Supervisor Nussbaum. Please go ahead, Supervisor Nussbaum.
Thank you. I would support, helping them fill out their paperwork, getting them whatever they need to get done so they're legal. But I cannot support having illegals here. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Supervisor Nussbaum. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go
Mr.
to
Chairman,
a vote.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Supervisor Finch?
Yes, I do have one question.
Please go ahead.
It states support the Hmong and Laotian communities within Winnebago County and oppose federal deportation to Laos. Now, what happens if some of them have gotten themselves in some major trouble? Do they automatically be expelled from this, or are they still, because of their nationality, we're still going to work with them? Because if they get themselves into a lot of trouble, are we going to continue to support these people, the people that are in trouble, not the other ones, or just what? I don't quite understand that.
Thank you, Supervisor Finch. What I would say is this resolution is not binding, so it doesn't change our approach to any individual like this. It is a statement as to where the board stands on this issue. It does not
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Finch. So next, I will call Supervisor Powers. Did you have another comment?
Yes,
Please go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, only
Please.
that there could be things that someone could, there are statutes that someone could act against, and be guilty of, but it's not certainly worth losing their life over. And if we were to send back any Hmong or Laotians back to Laos, who had been helping our soldiers, they will be killed for whatever infraction we might have in this country. Their life will be in danger if they're returned back. I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers.
Where's that coming from?
Seeing no other call-ins. Oh, I apologize, Supervisor Binder. Please go ahead, Supervisor Binder.
Hi, my understanding is it's something that happened years ago in their life, so they couldn't apply for citizenship, and they probably have been living here for the last 20 years, 30 years, crime-free. But it's like if you commit a felony when you're 18, you basically lose some of your rights. So I think it's because they couldn't apply for citizenship. They actually lived here for pretty much their whole life, but they can't get citizenship because of something they did in the past. Like you see, Governor Evers just pardoned a bunch of people so they could go into Canada hunting and fishing. You can't go if you have a felony. And I believe it's the same for these people. They can't apply for citizenship because they did something way in their past that affects it today. So I don't think it's nothing they've done in recent years. You know, if they're a US citizen or they're here, they're going to basically go to our prison. They can't get citizenship because of something they did long ago in their past. Thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Binder. I see a couple more call-ins. First, I'll call on Supervisor Eisen, followed by Supervisor Fari. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would call for a recorded vote.
We will do so, Supervisor Eisen. Thank you. Next, I'll call on Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Binder raises a point I wasn't aware of. Is he suggesting that infraction or violation of a country's law was in Laos or other countries before they came to this country or after they came to this country?
Supervisor Binder, do you want to respond? Supervisor Fari, do you want to maybe ask your question one more time, just so Supervisor Binder understands what you were asking?
Sure, Mr. Binder, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Your statement is of interest. You're suggesting that some of those that are here, and they're probably in their 70s, I would think, cannot get citizenship because they broke a law in a different country or in this country.
I believe it was probably in this country when they first came here, when they basically didn't know our rules and regulations. Maybe they didn't get the support they needed and they broke a law. They may have taken something that didn't belong to them. And we didn't deport them back then. You know, we basically let them stay here. Now they built their life here, their families here. And we're going to say, well, you did this 40 years ago. Now we're going to deport you. You know, if we'd have did it years ago, it may have been acceptable, but today they built their life here. They've been here their entire life. They raised their family here. You know, it's nothing recent. If they would have done it recent, they'd either be in our prison or they would be deported. They're basically something they did.
The majority of these individuals, are the majority of these individuals 70 years old or older?
That I couldn't tell you. I just know from talking, I went to the
Well,
festival.
Vietnam War, they must be about 70, 74 years old.
Well, I believe they are.
Thank
older.
you for that point, Mr. Binder. It's very valid. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fari, and thank you, Supervisor Binder. Seeing no other call-ins, we will go to a vote. We will honor Supervisor Eisen's request, and we will do a roll call vote, starting with District 1. The clerk will call for the vote by the roll.
Supervisor Konecki?
Supervisor Konecki?
I'm not sure if he's on. Supervisor Brunn?
Hello? You hear me?
Yes. Supervisor
Aye.
Borchert?
Yes.
Supervisor Eisen?
Aye.
Supervisor Ramos?
Aye.
Supervisor Defferding?
Aye.
Supervisor Newhoff?
Aye.
Supervisor Nussbaum?
Nay.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
That was a nay.
Okay. Supervisor Spellman? Did
No
you respond? Okay. Supervisor Albrecht?
Supervisor Albrecht?
Yes.
Was Supervisor Konecki again?
Yes.
Yes.
Konecki was a yes. I think, did I hear you correctly? Nay, Supervisor Albrecht, did I hear that at the end?
Yes.
Okay, so Supervisor Albrecht is a nay.
Supervisor Gabbard?
Supervisor Gabbard?
Don't see her. There she is.
If they did a violation, then they should be deported.
Supervisor Gabbard?
Yes.
Okay. Supervisor Bender?
Yes.
Supervisor Conrad?
Aye.
Supervisor Shorsey? Supervisor Shorsey? Here. Supervisor Belmonte?
Aye.
Supervisor Oren?
Aye.
Supervisor Lindgren? Okay. He's muted. Okay. Supervisor Longschlager?
Yes.
Supervisor Norton?
Supervisor Norton?
Aye.
Supervisor Zelmer?
Aye.
Supervisor Skellinger?
Aye.
Supervisor Buck?
Aye.
Supervisor Powers? Supervisor
Standing in support of what the president and people of the United States of America promised these people.
Supervisor Locke, did we hear your vote?
Supervisor Finch? He was muted, okay. Supervisor Youngquist?
Aye.
Supervisor Farley?
Supervisor Fari?
Oh, thank you. Based on what I've heard, I believe my vote tonight will be abstention. I'll abstain.
Okay.
And then I also saw Supervisor Finch. I don't think we heard his vote. I heard him. Supervisor Finch, I could tell you were trying to say your vote. His mic was open. Please go ahead, Supervisor Finch. Your mic is open.
Are you talking to me now?
Yes.
Okay, my vote would definitely be yes.
Thank you, Supervisor Finch.
Supervisor Rasmussen?
Aye.
Supervisor Keller?
Aye.
Supervisor Egan?
Aye.
Supervisor Ellis?
Aye.
Supervisor Snyder?
Aye.
Supervisor Jobs?
Aye.
We missed Supervisor Wingren?
Supervisor Wingren?
Wingren is aye. Aye.
Wingren, thank you, Supervisor Wingren. He's an aye.
Joel was an aye. And Albrecht was the only other one.
Albrecht was
an aye. Okay, I think that's everybody.
And the vote?
Twenty-seven to 2 with one
That
abstention.
motion passed 27 aye votes, 2 nay, 1 abstention. Okay. Moving on down to the next resolution. It's resolution number 072. Next resolution is resolution number 072-08-2020. Request the Wisconsin Legislature to act to protect refugees living in the state of Wisconsin. For that, I will call on Vice Chairman Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the approval of resolution number 072 2020.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 072-08-2020. Any discussion? I see Supervisor Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number one, you have everyone unmuted, so I'm getting some feedback. And number two, I also support this. Anyone who comes here with refugee status is fleeing a situation.
Thank you, Supervisor Gordon. We'll go ahead and try to mute all again. All right, thank you very much, Supervisor Gordon. Next speaker is Supervisor Norton.
We can't hear you, Mike.
Mike, you're muted.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Please
Mr.
go
Chairman,
ahead.
I'm bringing this forward. I forgot my first back in June, but I remember where I got it from. The Eclair County passed this back in, I think, March or February. And I thought it was relevant, A, because the previous resolution, and B, I just know that refugees, Winnebago County is one of the top 3 or 4 counties that houses or where refugees come in the state. We have the World Relief Organization that's just a couple blocks from the administration building. So that's why I'm bringing it forward, or I brought it forward to the legislative committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Norton. Any other discussion? I see Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a point of order.
Please go right ahead.
And my point would be, this says request Wisconsin legislature to act. And I was under the impression that if there is legislation involved, it's required to have a 3/4 majority. This resolution only calls for a simple majority. Can we consult with the Corporation Council to see what the appropriate majority should be?
Absolutely. That's a very good question, Supervisor. I was actually going to bring it up at the end anyways. Supervisor Keller actually rightly asked this question as well to myself and the Corporation Council. And we'll give the Corporation Council her opportunity. And I guess I'll give my thoughts as well. But first, I'll give the Corporation Council an opportunity to speak. I might have a different view than others, but absolutely, I looked at this myself. But first, since you asked for the Corporation Council, Mary Ann Miller, do you want to give your perspective on this?
Absolutely, Chairman Ramos. Looking at the rule, it talks about a 3/4 vote of those members present when there's any resolution presented for the purpose of expressing support or opposition regarding any pending or proposed state or federal legislation. So clearly there's no pending legislation, but then the question is proposed. Is there proposed legislation? I could see an interpretation which would suggest, well, we're proposing this, but my belief is that that would be based on assemblymen or legislators from Madison. So based on the discussion I had provided and back and forth, that I said that the majority would apply here. That's basically the summation of my belief.
Thank you, Corporation Council. And one clarification, just so I know the process with the agenda, and I meant to ask this earlier, Corporation Council. In terms of the decision, in terms of whether it requires the majority of those present or whether it requires 3/4 majority, is it correct to say that I, as chairman, have the latitude to decide which one that is, or is that not because it's an interpretation?
I believe you do not have a latitude because it's an interpretation of a legal question.
Okay, all right. And I guess then I would point out one thing for you to consider, because I might not have made it clear in my email. So just for your thoughts on it, the rule that I have on 7.7 that you state the wording I have, interestingly, says expressing support, opposition, or the desire for initiation of any state or federal legislation. Is that our current rule? And the reason I ask, because if it does say, or the desire for initiation,
Yeah.
I think at least we could consider whether or not this is a desire for initiation of state legislation. I just want to make sure that we're all considering the language in that rule fully. And perhaps that's not the wording. It is the copy I have though. So I wanted to make sure whether or not our rules, if it does say, or the desire for initiation.
And Chairman Ramos, I can tell you, the rule book I have, because I know the new rule book has not been issued, but the rule book I have says official directory 2019-2020, and it does not have any of the language of or the desire, but I know that perhaps it was last term, there was different language put in. If in fact the current rule says or the desire, that would change my interpretation.
And I appreciate that.
But what I am looking at is just pending or proposed state or federal legislation. But if it has the desire, that would change my opinion.
I appreciate that, Corbett. That's why I was bringing it up, is because I also have multiple versions as well. And the one I am reading off of is what's listed as our 2020 to 2022 rules. And that would incorporate that change we had made over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I don't have that book yet, but then if that's the language, then I would say it would be 3/4 of the members present.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Corporation Counsel.
Sure.
Okay. So I believe that answers the question that Supervisor Eisen had. I know Supervisor Keller had that same question as well. So based on that rule, where it includes language or desired, this would require a 3/4 vote of the members present, because that's actually what our rule says, 3/4 vote of the members present. Okay, very good. I'll call in succession then. I see Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Oh, that my hand was not removed from before.
Very good. Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. I believe it's Supervisor Wingren. I believe you were next, and I accidentally turned you off when I meant to turn off Supervisor Eisen. So Supervisor Wingren, I believe you had a comment. We're going to go ahead and work to unmute you, Supervisor Wingren.
Hello, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead, Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you. Once again, I say this with the greatest amount of respect. We have gone amok with the Corp Council not knowing or changing rules without looking things up. It's just so frustrating. During the organizational meetings, she insisted that you know, if a resolution or a proposal is defeated at a committee level, it doesn't make any difference. You can bring it to the county board anyway. And we went back and forth on that. And yet, at the same time, she did not, after it was brought to her attention, did nothing to follow one of the rules that's clearly there. And she knows which one I'm talking about. Members of the Judiciary Committee know. She was asked whether or not we completely ignored one of the rules during that time. And she said, you know, she admitted that was true. So I just don't like this. I mean, 1 second it's this, and the next second it's that. Again, at budget time, I think we need to, as a board, come up with a way of getting advice strictly for the board and not for the county executive, because we're not getting good advice here. Thank you.
Your Honor, Chairman Ramos, may I respond to that?
Please go ahead.
As Chairman or as Supervisor Wingren knows, the rules, as I've pointed out to him on numerous occasions, indicate that supervisors can introduce resolutions even if they fail at committee levels. And I will point to 7.1, 7.2, and 8.8 as was referenced at the Judiciary Committee. in regard to Mr. Wingren at a judiciary meeting saying, oh, 2.5 was not followed. I looked at it, and in fact, the rule, which had never been raised up until the judiciary meeting about a week and a half ago, said the chair of the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee will explain the county board rules. I looked at the agendas for 2012, 2014, 2016, and 2018, and I can tell you there is nothing on the agenda that indicated the chair of the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee would explain the county board rules. If Supervisor Wingren wanted to be able to explain the rules, he should have been able to reach out. He certainly has many years' experience, and perhaps he could have pointed that out beforehand, as opposed to at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I want to avoid a back and forth, so we're going to move on. We do have a couple other call-ins. I'll first call on Supervisor Powers, followed by Supervisor Shorsey. Please go ahead, Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 points. I guess I want to reiterate what Supervisor Gordon said. When someone is planning to migrate to another country, they make plans, they sell their homes, they sell their belongings, they pack things, and they go someplace they've researched. When you're a refugee, you go where you have to go with nothing, maybe except the clothes on your back, because you are at danger of losing your life. And I don't think that the people, especially since we were talking about the Hmong and Laotians earlier, you don't decide to go from a jungle environment and say, hey, that's a good idea. Let's go to Wisconsin. That's like a great place to go. They were refugees. And I want to remind people the difference between being an immigrant, whether it's illegal or not, and being a refugee. Number two, we often are chastised in this board by certain supervisors that if we want to get some information to our legislatures, we should just call them and not speak out on terms as a whole board. And I just want to say that 9 weeks ago, I called Representative Michael Schraw's office with a question and a deep concern. I left him my name, my phone number, my address, and 2 telephone numbers and my email. And in 9 weeks, I still haven't heard from him. So don't tell me that I should go talk to legislatures because they don't listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers. Next speaker is Supervisor Shorsey, followed by Supervisor Wingren. Please go ahead, Supervisor Shorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 things. The first is a point of order about the last vote. And I think you said there was 1 abstention, and I believe there were, I know I was one of the abstentions, and Supervisor Fari was the other. So if we
I
could
apologize.
clarify that.
Thank you for clarifying that. Then there were definitely 2 abstentions. You'd be correct.
Okay, and then I do intend to abstain from this resolution as well. And one of the things I am struggling with, and when I saw these come through, I think that, and we do this fairly often, where we take a very significant issue, and please understand my position is not against refugees or whatever, but we have never had a policy discussion about, and there's been a lot of discussion for several years now about deportation of refugees and all of that sort of thing, illegal immigrants. And we have never had a proper discussion on what Winnebago County's policy would be, whether it's Hmong Laotians or any other people coming to our county. So that's why I don't think this is handled properly. And we're just taking something else that another county did, and instead of saying, okay, let's talk about this issue and put it with the proper committees or whatever to have discussion, we come in with a resolution that's very narrow and really doesn't have a lot of teeth in it. And it doesn't make any commitment. It doesn't require any commitment of our county and any kind of funding that would be necessary. We don't have any data, and we certainly don't understand the scope of the issue for our county. So I really, please understand, it is not, I'm not opposed to those people. In fact, my preference is always providing help that really counts and that will really help solve the problem. So that is why I'm going to abstain. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. Next speaker, I'll call on Supervisor Wingren, followed by Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead,
Thank you,
Supervisor.
Mr. Chairman. I agree. I don't mean to go back and forth about anything, except at the last Judiciary Committee, Supervisor Scorsese brought up a bone of contention that I have, she has, I know many other members I've talked to have, and that is agenda management. Something we need to look at maybe for the future. I took the time while we were talking here to look online. The rules of the board are posted online. The whole world can see them, if not just us. And Rule 7.7 does state in black and white on page 33, any resolution that's presented for the purpose of expressing support, opposition, or the desire for initiation of any state or federal legislation shall require a 3/4 vote. So come on, that's right there. Agenda management, sir. Agenda management. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Wingren. And I agree in terms of the rules. That's why I actually brought it up, and other individuals like Supervisor Keller brought it up. So thank you. Next, I'll call on Supervisor Eisen, followed by Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at that same rule, number 7.7, on my Android. And because of that, and a interpretation of the chair that it is a 3/4 vote, I call for the question.
Very good. So there's a call for the question by Supervisor Eisen. Is there a second?
Second, Snyder.
There's a motion and a second to call the question, so we will go directly to that. So just to clarify what that means, we're not actually voting on the resolution. We're voting on whether or not to end debate on the resolution and then go directly to a vote for the resolution. So that is not debatable, and it does take a 2/3 majority to pass. If it fails, we continue our debate on the resolution. If it
Point
passes.
of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Point.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Supervisor Finch?
Chairman?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I guess I have a slight problem with this. It
But
seems
Supervisor
that
Finch, hold on, I'm sorry. But this, so I gotta be careful and consistent. So this
when there's
motion.
one individual gets done talking, but there's 36 people on this county board, not one person.
I realize that's Supervisor Finch, but it's not debatable, so we do have to go to a vote. So if you want to allow the other members to speak, then you would vote against calling the question. So we do have to go directly to a vote without debating it. So I just want to be consistent with everybody. If you don't want to end debate, then you would vote no when we're about to vote on the calling the question. If you want to end debate, you would vote yes. Okay, so we're going to go directly to a vote. Because this requires 2/3 of the members present, we're going to call the roll here to ensure we have a proper vote. Okay, so Clerk Ertmer will start with District 1. Supervisor Konetsky, specifically on calling the question to end debate, vote aye. Okay, that was a no, correct?
Yes, no.
Yes.
A no vote.
Okay, Supervisor Brunn?
Yes. Yes.
Supervisor Eisen. Supervisor Eisen.
Supervisor Eisen?
Aye.
Supervisor Ramos.
Aye.
Supervisor Depperding.
Yes.
Supervisor Newhoff.
Aye.
Supervisor Nussbaum.
Aye.
Supervisor Spellman.
She's not present.
Okay. Supervisor Albrecht?
Supervisor Albrecht, aye or nay on calling the question? Supervisor
Yes.
Albrecht was a yes. Thank you, Supervisor.
Supervisor Gabbard?
Supervisor Gabbard, your vote on calling the question.
Yes.
Supervisor Conrad?
Aye.
Supervisor Shortsey?
Yes.
Supervisor Belmonte?
Aye.
Supervisor Gordon? Aye. Supervisor Windren?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Supervisor Lautenschlager?
Aye.
Supervisor Norton?
Aye.
Supervisor Zelmer?
Aye.
Supervisor Skellinger?
No.
Sorry.
No, for Salinger.
Supervisor Buck?
No.
Supervisor Powers?
Aye.
That was an aye for Powers.
Supervisor Locke?
Supervisor Locke, your vote on calling the question. Supervisor Finch, your vote on calling the question.
Jerry.
Supervisor Youngquist?
Aye.
Aye.
That's an aye.
Supervisor Fari?
Aye.
Supervisor Rasmussen?
Supervisor Rasmussen, your vote on calling the question.
Aye.
Aye.
Supervisor Clayton?
Aye.
Supervisor
Supervisor Egan, your vote on calling the question.
Aye.
Aye, that's an aye.
Supervisor Ellis?
Aye.
Supervisor Spider?
Aye.
Supervisor Jones?
Aye.
There's three of them here.
We didn't hear him.
Stephen, there's Susan Lockinger.
Sir, we didn't hear his.
Supervisor Binder, do you have a vote on calling the question?
Yes.
That's an aye.
And then Supervisor Locke, we also hadn't heard from.
Yes.
Okay. That was a yes. Supervisor Locke was a yes. So that passed 28-3 because it needed a 2/3 majority. So that means we go directly to a vote on this resolution without any further debate. So just for clarification, we're on resolution number 072-08-2020. Request the Wisconsin legislature to act to protect refugees living in the state of Wisconsin. We're going to go directly to a vote. It's going to require a 3/4 vote of the members present to pass. So I think we're going to have to do a roll call vote again on this. Okay, so we're now voting on the resolution. Once again, it will require a 3/4 majority vote of the members present to pass. So we'll start with the clerk on District 1. This is on the actual resolution.
Aye.
Supervisor Borcher?
Supervisor Borcher, your vote?
Aye. Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have to unmute Sue's mic. That's why nobody can hear her.
She's unmuted.
No, she's not.
No, it is. Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Supervisor Brun,
Abstain.
and we had Supervisor Borchert. Supervisor Eisen,
Aye.
Supervisor Ramos,
Aye.
Supervisor Defferting,
Yes.
Supervisor Newhoff,
Aye.
Supervisor Nussbaum,
Nay.
Supervisor Spellman, Supervisor Albrecht,
Aye.
Supervisor Gabbard,
Abstain.
Supervisor Bitter,
Yes.
Supervisor Conrad,
Aye.
Supervisor Shorsey,
Abstain.
Supervisor Volante,
Supervisor.
Aye.
Belmonte?
Aye.
Supervisor Gordon. Aye. Supervisor Winter,
Aye.
Supervisor Lumberschlager,
Aye.
Supervisor Norton,
Aye.
Supervisor Zoner,
Aye.
Supervisor Skellinger,
Aye.
Supervisor Buck,
Aye.
Supervisor
Supervisor Powers?
Aye.
Supervisor Locke,
Oh, aye.
Supervisor Finch,
Aye.
Supervisor Youngquist,
Aye.
Supervisor Fari,
Abstain.
Supervisor
Abstain.
Supervisor Keller,
Aye.
Supervisor Egan,
Aye.
Supervisor Ellis,
Abstain.
Supervisor Snyder,
Aye.
Supervisor
Aye.
So 25, 6 with 32 supervisors.
So the vote is 25 to 1 to 6. So that passes because it is based on the 3/4 majority of the members present. It required, just so you know, for the record, 23.25 votes to pass with the 3/4 majority of the members present, because there were 30. Hang on one second here. I want to make sure I had that correct. I might have. I think I had it. I think it's 24. I want to make sure I'm telling them correctly. I think it would, and I apologize. It still doesn't change the passage, but I had told you 23.25. It's 24 it required because there's 32. So it still passed because it was 25 in favor, 1 opposed, and 6 abstentions. All right. So moving on then to the next resolution. There are 2 more resolutions to go. So this is the second to last resolution. It's resolution number 073-08-2020, amending the Winnebago County Merit Pay Plan. For that, I will call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for resolution number 073-08-2020.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 073-08-2020. Any discussion, please raise your Zoom hand. I see one. I'll call on Supervisor Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, during the roll call, everyone was unmuted and I couldn't hear Sue. And everyone is still unmuted.
Okay, I was hearing the other individuals.
I could hear individuals, but I could barely hear Sue.
Okay, you could barely hear Sue Ortmer. Okay, we'll make sure that with the mic that hopefully we can hear better. Thank you, Supervisor Gordon. All right, very good. Any other discussion in regards to resolution number 073-08-2020? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, that motion carries. Moving on down to the final resolution. It's resolution number 074-08-2020. Authorize 4-year contract with Calray Incorporated for RadPro Secure Pass whole body security scanning for the system. For that, I will call on Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move approval of resolution 74-08-2020.
Second, Ron.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 074-08-2020. Thank you, Supervisor Wingren. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries unanimously. All right, very good. So that concludes our business items for this evening's agenda. So just as a reminder, we do have a special orders meeting coming up on Tuesday, September 10th. And therefore, with that, I will call, September 1st, I apologize. With that, I will call on Supervisor Albrecht for a motion to adjourn to September 1st. Supervisor Albrecht?
I move we adjourn until September 1st at 6 p.m.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn until September 1st. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Very good. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. You have a great evening.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone.
Charles.
Thank you as well, Supervisor Locke.